And we're back. This is The Red Press. We're sitting here in Liverpool city centre, al fresco, in an overcast setting. I'm Mark Magill, and I'm joined today by Keifer MacDonald, one of the football writers over at the Liverpool Echo. Keifer, how are you doing today?
Very well, tired. A late night last night at Anfield, but Liverpool got the job done. 3 points, top of the Premier League. I don't think I've had a better Friday, to be fair. So
it's good, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's. I mean, how did you find it last night? You were there, obviously working last night. As you said, late night for you with the pressers and what have you. But what was the atmosphere like in the stadium? It seemed like a little bit nervy at times. Were you picking up on that in the stands?
Yeah, it was kind of similar to Sunday in a way. I mean, there's so much has been made of Liverpool kind of slow starts, this season and last. And, Sheffield United nearly followed what Brighton did, didn't they?
Thank you, here's the latte.
They nearly followed Brighton's lead and scored so early on. James McAtee at the back post. It was a long throw and wasn't it, flicked on into the box. And I think after that, everyone was like, wow, this isn't going to be the walkover. I think everyone expected it to be pre-match. I mean, there was a lot of talk of, this is the night Liverpool get their goal difference boosted. And, Arsenal beating them 6-0, a month or 6 weeks ago. So
I saw a lot of wild social media posts in the lead up to the game, like guessing score lines. I thought,
I mean, my brother texted me before the game, said, this is the night we get 6. I said, I'd take 1. And that's it. I suppose, it's cliche, isn't it? But there's no easy games in the Premier League. Teams like Sheffield United, yes, they're rock bottom. I think 10 points from safety now with 8 games to go, but they're still fighting for their lives. And Chris Wilder, he's had a difficult job since he's returned, but he's made them hard to beat. They've had some good results. They were unlucky against Fulham at the weekend. Luton a few weeks ago. So
we had a tricky time against them in the away fixture as well.
December as well.
That was no walk in the park, I thought.
So I think last night was. It's weird, isn't it? Because you can't really judge how it feels at the Etihad and at the Emirates, but it does feel like until Liverpool were to win 3 or 4 Premier Leagues in a row, every game in the running is going to be nervy, and it almost feels at times too emotional. I mean, I did think that on Saturday as well against Brighton.
Yeah.
Yes, it wasn't a great start. They conceded after 80 odd seconds, and as I say, last night it needed the same. But it feels like when you do kind of surrender a chance so early, then everything that follows that, players are almost trying to make up for it. And as soon as that first pass goes out of play or someone hits a cross or something, the anxiety levels do slowly
almost
start
set a
to creep
narrative.
Up. Yeah, it's not going to be our night here. We might as well throw the towel in.
Yeah.
And with Liverpool not having complete control over the game, I mean, Klopp said after the game they had 80% possession, over 80% possession, but it wasn't controlled, and it was the same on Saturday really for much of the first half. And when they haven't got complete control over a game like City have, where they almost kill you, put you into a slow death, don't they? They pass it. I think it's always going to be anxious and
death by football, as Brendan Rodgers used to say. I mean, you're talking then about the slow start. Obviously, we saw it against Brighton, and we nearly saw it last night against Sheffield United. I mean, what do you attribute that to? It's like everyone knows. Yeah. It's not like a secret that it's happening. It's been happening for a while. It's not. It's been something that Jurgen Klopp spoken about, something that everyone's spoken about. I can't really figure out what's going on. Have you got any take on it?
It's weird, isn't it? Because people say it's been going on for a while now, and I always attribute it to probably 2 years ago when they were going for the last quadruple. When they were going for all the trophies, and you think the Champions League semi-final away at Villarreal, they went 2-0 down early doors. Most league games, even on the final day against Wolves, they went 1-0 down, and it wasn't really until late in the second half that they turned it around. So there were so many games in that running where they went behind it as well at the Etihad in that 2-2 game. So I suppose when you are able to come back, it's that cliche of it's the sign of champions, it's the mentality monsters, and no one really is too bothered about it because at this stage of the season, we're over 40 games in all competitions. If Liverpool aren't having complete control over games now, they're not going to do it for the last 8 games, are they? They're very much rolling with the punches and one is a game every 3 games. So I think if you look at it 2 years ago, everyone was kind of happy to paper over the cracks, and then last year you look at the other elements that come into that, an age in midfield and maybe a whole team and a spine that's fatigued from the 63 game season they played. Then all of a sudden it's cause for concern, and it feels like this year we've kind of gone back to you go back to as early as August when they came from behind to win at Newcastle. That was the first of 7 games they've won in the Premier League coming behind. I think it's 26 points now, which is the most of any in the league.
It's crazy, isn't it?
And I suppose when they do it so often, you've always just got to say, well, this is how they're going to, if they are going to win the league, this is how they're going to do it. I think Arsenal kind of went through a similar phase last year, and I think if you were to go back to 2018, 2019, Liverpool were probably very similar. Klopp said all season that it's Liverpool 2.0 and it's year 1, and the reality is that they're way further in their development than anyone expected them to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
So maybe next season, when a lot of the young lads, you think Mac Allister and even Endo, an older head, but someone who's never played in the Premier League, never had a title charge, You think of Bradley, Quansah, even Keller to an extent. Really, he's been around, but he's not played in the big
he's never
games,
had
has
this
he?
run of games.
And so you maybe think next year they might go a bit more hardened, like 19-20 Liverpool was, where when they went 1-0 up at Anfield, teams were like, well, that's us done. We'll just think about next week. And because I always think personally that the 2018-2019 season was far funner.
It was the most exciting.
Yeah.
In those, I think Klopp, or maybe it might have even been Pep, who characterised those 15 minutes, 20 minutes of red mist that had come over the Liverpool team in games, and they could kill everyone. We saw them just murder teams, but then give away goals.
But to win titles, you have to go the other way.
There was a clear. You're right. It was like a clear evolution in that, first Klopp team. Yeah, maybe we're seeing the start of the second.
And I think next season it'll be interesting to see if they do make that kind of transition. I'm sure as a paying supporter, people would rather see a 4-3 game. If that's the kind of the Premier League, isn't it?
I don't think Man United were too pleased with the 4-3 game last night.
But I suppose if you're Klopp, you'd much rather have a 1-0 every week for 38 games in a row, because it's again a cliche, but attack wins your games, but defence wins your titles, doesn't it? And I don't think that's rings so true, doesn't it? Even now more than ever, with the margins at the top between Arsenal, City, and Liverpool so fine. That's
right. I mean, obviously last night it's difficult to talk about the game last night without mentioning Alexis Mac Allister. Thoughts?
I think he's brilliant, and
he's all right, isn't he?
And that goal last night was. Everyone said Gerrard versus Olympiacos. I mean, I think I was only 3 years old at the time, so probably couldn't recall that one too well.
I think I might have a few more miles on the clock than you, but it was a similar.
It was brilliant, and I always think with Mac Allister, you kind of split his season into two halves, don't you? And the first half of the season, he was Liverpool's out and out number 6, and maybe Szoboszlai got more of the credit if you think of all the midfield signings. He was the one who was the glamour signing. He was the tricks, the flicks, a few goals as well. And Mac Allister was he went under the radar, and he kind of did his grafting away from the limelight. But since Endo, has really grown into life at Liverpool, I think from December onwards, and then when he came back from the Asia Cup, that's allowed Mac Allister to go further forward. Obviously, there's a bit of luck needed in his, because he's got games because Curtis Jones has been out injured as well, so he's probably got more games than he would have, and the likes of Jota being out, Salah as well. He's took that responsibility. We've seen him take big penalties as well. That one against Manchester City, but he's changing games for Liverpool. He's
amazing free kick last night as well.
Brilliant, and you think even against Nottingham Forest a few weeks ago. The calmness in the 99th minute to kind of control the ball from the corner, look up and clip a ball to the back post. And it just, again, last night, how many times would a player spurn that into the Kop? And it's not Liverpool's night, is it? And the night kind of got away from them, but to keep the technique to kind of keep your body over the ball and not even take a touch, but just first time, it was just absolutely brilliant.
I think you've obviously, the form he's in, you put that technique with the confidence that he's obviously just radiating. You see it all over the pitch. I think he won the ball back in that move the goal. He won the ball back initially, and then, which is showing obviously one side of his game, and then these spectacular goals. I didn't really think we'd be seeing too many of them. I know he scored quite a few for Brighton, but I think a lot of his goals came from the penalty spot. Yeah. So I was in the past 11 games, and he scored 5 goals, 5 assists, and among those goal involvements, there's been 5 match winners that he's been involved with. So you can see. He must just be loving it at the minute.
Oh, absolutely, and that kind of confidence, and this is the lad who's won the World Cup. I mean, we say it's his first time playing for no disrespect to Brighton, but it's his first time challenging at the top of the Premier League. But let's not forget, he's won the biggest trophy in the game, the biggest trophy there is to win. He's played alongside Lionel Messi,
who speaks very highly of him.
Oh, absolutely, and you think that final against France in the World Cup final, how instrumental he was. I think there was the goal for Di Maria where he kind of picks the ball up. And then he plays it across to Di Maria. So he's influenced the biggest games in world football. So it's when you think about it, it's probably not too much of a surprise. Well, it probably won't be to him that he's able to influence games at Anfield on a weekly basis. But there was a really nice moment at the end where kind of everyone had come off the pitch and said their goodbye. But to the fans still on the ground, and Mac Allister was the last one on the pitch, and he kind of took in the applause, and the fans still in the main stand and the Kop were really taken to him, and he kind of looked a little bit embarrassed because but it's kind of the level that he's grown to, is he's probably becoming the latest Kop hero, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he always comes across as quite humble, maybe not someone who seeks the limelight too much, but you can't really avoid it when you in shots like he did last night, and obviously hit the post with the free kick, and he's developing these sides of the game which superstar players are doing these things. So I think he might have to just get used to being on the back of a few more jerseys. And
the thing is as well, I mean, I got home last night and I watched the Chelsea United game, obviously, a thriller down at Stamford Bridge, and Moises Caicedo, British record transfer, 150 million quid.
Yeah.
He's setting up Garnacho for United, to make it 2-1. And you've got Declan Rice as well, who's been absolutely phenomenal for Arsenal this year. But I suppose when you pay 100 million quid for a midfielder, you'd expect him to have that impact. So as great as he has been, he's probably doing the job that he was brought in to do.
Yeah.
But Mac Allister at 35 million is an absolute steal, and every single week I feel like we probably should be sending Brighton some more money just to kind of make that be a bit fairer. But I mean,
tipping football clubs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's got to go down. I think it's probably the signing of the season. As I say, you can argue Rice, but for that kind of money, you'd expect him to turn challenges into maybe title winners.
Yeah, but I think obviously we just spoke about like Liverpool not making it easy for themselves and giving goals away and starting slowly. To know that there's players in the team who are match winners is kind of massive going into the last 8 games we're into now. It's exciting stuff.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is, you think this time last year, the situation Liverpool were in, they were relying on other people, United and Newcastle to drop points if they were to get into the top 4, and it's sad that it's Klopp's final. I think he's got 14 games left if they did go all the way in the Europa League as well. But it's just such an enjoyable time, I suppose. And yes, there is a sense of nerves at Anfield, of course. There's always going to be that one, so much at stake. But I think there's a real element now and a kind of a real emphasis to enjoy these last 6 weeks or whatever it is left of the Klopp reign, because quite frankly they could be the best of the lot. Exactly.
I was at the Brighton game and I just made it. It's a conscious decision to try and drink it all in, try and enjoy it, and just. I always feel that way anyway when you're involved in title run-ins or whether you're going a long way in a competition. Just try and enjoy it. I know these things are stressful, but football should be enjoyable at the end of the day. And you talk about like where we were last season compared to where we are now. Let's just all try and have a smile on our faces.
If someone had said to you, this time 12 months ago, in the final 8 games of the Premier League, and you're champions, and Jurgen Klopp goes away and he has the last laugh over Pep Guardiola, I mean, you would have absolutely snapped someone's hands off. So for that to be a reality, and I know there's tough games, we'll get onto United in a second, I'm sure. There's Everton as well, there's Aston Villa, all tough away games, West Ham as well. But it really is a chance to be seized. That they're not, for so many years it's felt like Klopp's almost, he's not played second fiddle, but he's always kind of been not outdone by Guardiola. I think that would be unfair to say, but he's always the bridesmaid, never the bride kind of thing, isn't he? And it's always felt like he's been pipped to the post. But for this now to be in his in his own control, and like I say, it's a huge ask to win all 8 games, I would think. But they're not relying on someone else, just do their job, and that's Klopp said in midweek that he's not watching Arsenal, he's not watching Manchester City. His eyes are kind of firmly fixed on Liverpool and Liverpool only. Yeah,
which is good. And they did win last night, of course, and a big part of that was the substitutions.
Yeah.
Brilliant. I mean, Jurgen Klopp, I think over the past year or so, when the amount of subs that you could use has changed, I think we've seen him change how he rotates teams, and he's rotating in game a lot more than rotating as from the start 11. And a lot of the time it works, sometimes it hasn't. I think it's fair to say that last night the subs definitely worked. What did you make of them?
Yeah, I think they were big calls. I mean, on 60 to take Salah off when you're in need of a goal, just after Sheffield United have scored. So, that clearly was planned in the build-up. I think Elliott was getting ready, Robertson was getting ready as well. But then to kind of not go back on it. When Sheffield United score, he's bold. And I know there was a few people on Twitter at the time saying, he's taking Salah off, what is he doing, kind of thing. But I think it's interesting. You can almost see how Klopp, he's kind of lining up his teams with his substitutions in mind, because there's a few people who I think would have probably started Elliott last night. Gravenberch, he's obviously been injured after the cup final, hasn't he? But he's not kind of had the season I think everyone maybe expected him to have.
Yeah.
And,
he had a bright start and then slightly tailed off maybe.
He kind of faded out a bit, hasn't he? But you can almost see that Klopp's thinking, well, if I start Gravenberch, that gives me Elliott, and who's going to make a bigger impact if I'm in need of a goal?
Yeah.
Elliott's got the thing of he can play, he can play wide left, he can play wide right, he can play midfield left, he can play midfield right. You can almost play any position. If you want to change it and go with a 10, he can play there. And also I just think he adds that kind of vigour, that energy. He really ups the tempo, and I think sometimes you do need that. And
I think that was the big thing with last night. Is you're right, like tempo. And we saw it with all the players there. It really, especially with Elliott, you can see as soon as he received the ball, he's not necessarily trying to go wide right and take plays on. He's looking to move the ball, and he's when he hasn't got the ball, he's moving all the time. And I thought he was magnificent last week. He was 21 yesterday, a couple of days ago.
Crazy, isn't it?
Brilliant.
And I suppose as well, like, especially after Sheffield United have scored, Anfield's a bit deflated, a bit anxious. It goes back to kind of what we said at the top of the show. You've got half an hour left to kind of keep the Premier League title dream in your own hands. So there's big responsibility there, and especially when Sheffield United are playing with a back three, a back five, whatever you want to call it. They're yes, they've conceded 80 goals this season, but not a glamorous task to try and break 5, 6 or centre half.
You've got to turn up. You can't expect.
Exactly.
You've got to put the work.
And I think straight away Elliott, he combines with Robertson. There's a wicked kind of diagonal to the back post, and Robertson hits into the side netting. But that kind of just shows what they're about. And Robertson as well. I mean, again, his season's been kind of injury hit with, I think a collarbone injury and then the ankle injury suffered on international duty last month. But in terms of what you're going to get from him, exactly you're going to get up and down relentless all night. And again, with half an hour on the clock, Klopp's probably just said to him, go and be an absolute nuisance. And if you take him that way, it's going to open space for a Szoboszlai or not Birch, but a Mac Allister or someone to kind of maybe have more space infield. And that's kind of how Liverpool are grinding these teams down. And it goes back to what you said. I don't think it's a coincidence that there's so many late winners, because it is these small margins and these more tactical tweaks of to kind of for teams to be able to withstand that Liverpool pressure for 85, 90 minutes. It probably gets added time, the 6, 7, 8, the ball goes up and they're probably knackered and thinking we can't hold on, and then that's when you get the the moments that people would call luck, where maybe a defender hits a clearance or slices it, or doesn't mark a man or whatever. It's mental fatigue as well as physical, and that's just testament to kind of how ruthless Liverpool are.
Great. And it's also some of these subs are bringing on players with different kind of playing profiles as well, so it's causing teams to think differently. So say for instance Elliott coming off for Salah, different kind of player, specifically Robertson coming on for Gomez. I thought Gomez was brilliant last night, but maybe the wrong play. We see him stepping into midfield a lot, being that extra man in midfield, and then I think he was at number 6 for a little bit. But when he steps into midfield, I think everything was just so congested. I think it was crying out for Robertson to get up and down, provide a little bit of width, and do it a real trademark Andy Robertson thing of just that glorious crossing, and just begged Gakpo to head it, and he looked really sharp as well, Gakpo, I thought.
And it was, I think, a well-needed goal, wasn't it? I mean, he's
took a lot of stick recently.
And probably unfairly as well. I think, you think again where he probably was this time last year. I mean, Liverpool were, in dire straits, weren't they? But he was kind of the man, sticking his head above the water and saying, look, I'll score the goals. He scores 2 against United, goal against Arsenal. Sorry, goal against Everton, goal at Newcastle as well. So he was scoring, big goals, and kind of, if Liverpool were going to get in the Champions League, it felt very much like it was all going to, be down to kind of Gakpo's goals. And I always think as well, you think the reaction to when Firmino announced that he was leaving in March, April kind of time, I think everyone was like relatively okay with it, because they're like, we've got Salah, we've got Diaz, but we've also got Gakpo, and he kind of felt like a ready-made replacement. But I always kind of think the sliding doors moment was Newcastle away, and I think obviously Nunes comes on and scores the goals, and I think from that moment on, Klopp's just put all his chips down with Nunes.
100%,
and that's obviously changed it for Gakpo, because it's not as if the 2 strikers who play off the shoulder. If you are to bring Gakpo on with 15 minutes left, it kind of changes the roles of players around him, because if he comes in field, it makes the midfield more congested. It probably means the wide players have to go in behind more. Whereas if Nunes is playing, the wide players come back more. All those kind of little sort of tweaks of,
again, different player profiles for different situations.
So it's a huge ask. A lot of the time he gets like 25-minute cameos. I think against City he was really poor when he came on. He'd probably be the first to admit it. But it's because players probably aren't used to playing with him as they are to Nunes. They get the ball and they just look up and he's running, or he's chasing down the channels. So for him to get that goal last night, a brilliant header. I mean, I'm not too sure what the goalkeeper was doing with his positioning, but I mean, as we said, it's kind of the subs combining again. It's a brilliant cross from Robertson, and how many times have we seen him do that? And
Gakpo, most assists
night overtaking Trent, hasn't he?
Crazy.
Kind of goes one week the next, doesn't it? So, but no, Gakpo was really pleased for him, because he's a player. He's probably going to be a big summer for him. I think there's a few in that squad you could probably say who are, that they are cherished, but do they want to play more elsewhere? And he's 24, 25, isn't he? He's if he doesn't play a lot of the Euros, he might be told quietly by his Netherlands boss that he might need to play more. And so
this might depend on who's going to be Liverpool boss
exactly.
as well.
Does someone play with a number 9? Does they play with a 10? It's all these little sort of things which could have huge kind of ramifications. But between now and the end of the season, Liverpool will need his goals off the bench. So,
and the other substitute last night, of course, Curtis Jones, back from injury. Someone I think Liverpool have missed a lot. You talk about controlling games, and I think he's a player who's vital to how Liverpool control him. He very rarely gives the ball away. Really intelligent, tactically aware footballer. I thought he was great when he came on last night. Just showing maybe a little bit of what we've been missing over the past couple of months. Glad to see him back.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, he's kind of Liverpool's metronome, isn't he? He's kind of provides that equilibrium to the midfield when you've got Szoboszlai maybe running ahead and you've got Mac Allister trying to glue it all together. But I just think Jones is kind of the best of all of them.
Yeah.
He's got that number 10 kind of silky, wide forward attributes about him from his days as an academy player. But he's also got the discipline now that we saw from a Gini Wijnaldum, which how key was that to Liverpool winning the Premier League, the Champions League, and kind of all the trophies that came with it. But as you say, we talk about control and kind of the lack of it Liverpool have had, and it's no coincidence that that's kind of come without Curtis Jones, isn't it? It's he's the one who's able to put his foot on the ball and say sometimes less is more. Sometimes we're 2-1 up, but we don't need to go for a third, or we're confident enough to hold on for a second, or let's make them work, or whatever kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, really good to see him back because he's another big player. I mean, I don't know if Sunday will come too soon for him, but you're thinking that FA Cup tie a few weeks ago, how they could have done with a player like him, whether it be starting or off the bench, because just to be able to sometimes at 3-2,
cheers.
Sometimes at 3-2, or if you're ahead in the game, just to be able to put your foot on the ball and say, hang on lads, let's, because it felt like in that game at Old Trafford, Liverpool just didn't know how to defend.
No, not
they
at all.
thought, well, attack's the best form of defence, let's just try and outscore them. When in reality, obviously hindsight's a wonderful thing.
The occasion kind of got to him a little bit.
Absolutely, rabbit in the headlights kind of thing. As we said before, a lot of young players, a lot of inexperienced players probably playing their first game at Old Trafford. Quansah, Bradley, Kelleher. So yeah, I mean, Curtis Jones, he's only going to boost Liverpool between now and the season.
I think it's interesting because he's more naturally suited and he's got experience playing that left side of the midfield three. Mac Allister really shines on the right side, Endo in the base. I think, are you giving it Szoboszlai or Szoboszlai? What are you
Szoboszlai, yeah.
What is it? I'm still on the fence.
I think everyone says different things.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure yet, but obviously he's more suited to play on the right side of the midfield three there. I think with Curtis Jones in there, maybe there's a little bit more balance. Maybe, again, that might allow Mac Allister to kind of run the show a little bit. We know Curtis Jones can drop in as a double six and all this kind of stuff. So I think out of all these players that Liverpool have been missing, I think low-key he's been one of the most important.
Absolutely, and it goes back to what you were saying earlier, changing up. If you are in need of a goal, sometimes, it can be too easy for teams. They know what to expect. They know if they can see a midfield three just like that on paper, giving the ball 1-2s and whatnot, it can be quite easy. They can be quite content with that. But all of a sudden, if you've got a midfielder that's able to kind of, Szoboszlai and Mac Allister switch, or Szoboszlai and Jones, or Mac Allister and Jones, if they're all kind of able to drop in and do each other's roles, probably more fluid than it is at the moment with Endo in there and stuff like that. Yeah. It's going to be difficult for teams to defend because all of a sudden, who's marking him, who's following him, kind of thing, and that's how you create those overloads in the central areas, and you drag someone out, and also all of a sudden Mac Allister's got a bit of space to pop off a shot or play through a ball like he did against Brighton at the weekend. I mean, that comes from Szoboszlai going out wide and then he fires it in. So all this kind of fluidity and kind of being able to welcome these different player profiles back is only going to boost Liverpool, you'd think.
Have you got like an ideal midfield three, or do you see it as like more of a midfield 5-6? So we talk about in-game rotation and stuff like that. Or you think it's too fluid to like nail down to a perfect three? Do you think?
It's difficult. I think Elliott, as great as he's been, I'm always prefer him on the bench just because of what he can do, and I just don't think there's a player like him who can come on and change a game if you are chasing a game or you need a goal. So I kind of almost eliminate Elliott from the conversation, but not because of his ability or anything. I just think he's almost become that David Fairclough super sub, hasn't he?
Yeah.
It's no coincidence kind of how many goals he's got this season and goal contributions. I think at the minute it's that late in the season. You've probably just got to stick with what's played for the majority, and I kind of will probably echo that for the rest of the team as well. So I think Endo is probably one of Liverpool's undroppable cogs at the minute. I think he's just having someone who's an out-and-out defensive midfielder just has really elevated those around him. We talk about Mac Allister and his growing impacts since February time. There's no coincidence that someone behind him has been a stable kind of body that knows the role, knows how to clean up, and he obviously feels confident enough to go forward and leave him behind to kind of do a one-man.
He's a real specialist, isn't he, Endo?
Absolutely, and that's kind of what Liverpool lacked in the early weeks of the season. I thought in the early months of the season, as good as Mac Allister was, to kind of have a natural, you can't really put a price on that. I think Mac Allister as well, you said there about his goal contributions over the last 10-11 games. I mean, it speaks for himself. He's stepping up at the biggest moments, so I think you've got to keep him in there as well. I think maybe the one is Szoboszlai. I think he's blown hot and cold in recent weeks. As I say, against Brighton, he was really good in the build up to Salah's goal. But I think sometimes games do tend to pass him by a bit. He had such a bright start in the first half of the campaign, and I don't think we've really seen him hit those levels yet. Return to those, but I think so. I think it'll be a shootout between him and Jones, and whether that moves Mac Allister onto the right and then you bring Jones in on his favoured left position. But as I say, to have kind of all options and kind of different facets, and I'd be surprised if all Liverpool's players stay fit between now and the end of the season, to be quite honest with you. So
the way the season's been going, yeah.
To kind of have all players firing on all cylinders and kind of minutes and match minutes is really important. So
some big players coming back as well.
Absolutely. I mean, the 2 Europa League games is a perfect chance for, maybe not the first leg, but certainly the second leg. You're probably looking at Trent and Jota to come back into there. Maybe too soon for Alisson, but if you're able to get some minutes in the legs of Alexander-Arnold and Jota, and then all of a sudden you've got Spurs that weekend. Again, you need a goal. You bring Jota off. You bring Jota on. Sorry. You've got options. I mean, so it is kind of all feels like it's gearing up quite nicely for these last 6-8 weeks of finally some of the players who have been out for so long are able to come back.
So looking ahead to Sunday, big game.
Big game.
Doesn't come much bigger than that. Liverpool playing after the two rivals. I think is Palace, City, and Brighton, Arsenal, both on Saturday.
Both away. Both
tricky away games. Obviously, Champions League games for both those teams coming up. City are away to Real Madrid, maybe the trickiest one they've got. So Liverpool play on Sunday after the rivals. They seem to be able to come up with these answers, but I think maybe Sunday might be a trickier test. It's going to be probably a situation where Liverpool will have to win. Let's assume that is going to be right for every game this season, even though I think all three teams are going to drop points at some point. But let's assume that Arsenal and City both win. Pressure goes back on Liverpool there. United, real up and down team at the moment, but when you go to Old Trafford and you've got to get 3 points, it's not going to be an easy place. How do you think Liverpool are going to change the approach from obviously the FA Cup game where it didn't really work out for Liverpool at all?
It's difficult, isn't it? Because if you were to say on the morning of that FA Cup game, Liverpool are going to score 3 goals today, you think, well, you're in the same kind as the FA Cup. I mean, to score 3 goals at Old Trafford is rare for any team, and kind of Liverpool especially, who have struggled there. You even think of, I think since 2014 it's 3 wins. You had the one 2014, and then you had the 5-0, and then the one in lockdown the season before. So as good as Liverpool have been, champions of Europe, champions of the world, champions of England, they have really struggled at Old Trafford. A lot of draws there, and I think a lot of that has been psychological. It feels the same. I always kind of put it in the same bracket as Goodison Park. They always play the team, not the occasion. Sorry, play the team. Play the occasion. Play the occasion, not the team. In Everton's case, relegation fodder this season, and in United's case, a team that's probably the 7th or 8th best in the league. We saw that last night that they're leaky at the back, and they haven't got their first choice back four. So they are there for the taking, but you still don't have that absolute confidence that Liverpool will go there and lay down a real marker.
I think certainly one where they can't afford a slow start. I think.
No, exactly, and you think I think it has the capacity to be toxic there on Sunday. If Liverpool were to be racing to a 1 or a 2 goal lead, you think of a manager who's in all that he'll probably not going to be there next season. I think it's probably fair to say. You think how he's kind of trying to get to grips with some fans wanting him in, some fans wanting him out. So if you are able to apply that pressure on, get an early goal, 1 or 2, all of a sudden it could become Liverpool's playground kind of thing. And it was similar when Solskjaer was there in the 5-0. Liverpool's 2 or 3 goals before half time, and all of a sudden, after the ground's empty, and then Liverpool just fed on that in the second half. And with that game in particular, I mean, it was 5-0 on 50 minutes or whatever, and Liverpool probably could score another 2 or 3, but they just said, look, we're gonna put our foot on the ball there and just. That
was I think probably the cruelest thing they could have done on that occasion, where they were literally just sideways passing for 30 minutes. It was, obviously you think, let's win this 10-0 or whatever, but I think, the cruelest thing is like, let's have a nice time for 30 minutes, lads.
So I think in terms of this weekend, it's difficult, but I suppose it's such a rare opportunity that you'd get to play at Old Trafford, twice in such quick succession, 3 weeks apart, whatever it was. So
try and put some things to bed, really.
I think psychologically, the fact that they've gone there and they've, almost with, not a second string team, but they had so many players out in there. You'd imagine Konate will, be involved. He's obviously missed out last time. A few other players there as well. So from that perspective, it's like, well, we've already done it. Almost, we've scored 3 goals. If we almost replicate that performance again and just kind of take the bits out, the game manager, and if we just kind of have a bit more about us, know that less is sometimes more, we'll be fine. And I think the defeat is almost, in the manner which it came is. That wouldn't happen in a league game. If Liverpool were to get a corner in the 90, or the 120th minute at Old Trafford, they're not putting that in the box. They're playing that short, and I think the only reason they did that is because they thought we're probably going to lose on penalties here, just because of you're taking penalties at Old Trafford.
Yeah.
They probably thought, let's go down swinging rather than chance our luck on a penalty shootout. So if that was to happen in the league game, you're leaving there with a point, which, all right, it might not be a great point, but Liverpool have got a buffer. They've got a 2-point buffer at the minute. Yes, Arsenal got a better goal difference, but as you say, I'd be very surprised if 4 teams won their remaining games. I mean, Arsenal have got to go to Tottenham. They've got to go to Old Trafford as well.
Second to last game, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's
City obviously got these big, massive European Champions League where you think, I don't think managers at that level really prioritise competitions as much.
But it almost feels if City were to drop, I mean, they're 3 behind. If they were to drop points at the weekend against Palace, all of a sudden they might be 5 behind or 6 behind, whatever.
Psychologically, it's
all
massive.
of a sudden you're thinking, actually, are Liverpool going to drop 7 more points between now and the end of the season? Probably not. No. So are we putting all our eggs in the Champions League basket? Trying to do back-to-backs. The first team to do that since Madrid. That'd be some achievement for Guardiola. Will probably almost cement his legacy more than another Premier League, wouldn't it? Yeah. So there's little assets where this weekend it could really be quite interesting and quite defining in the title race. I mean, Brighton away, as we saw, coming to Anfield last weekend, they're such an awkward side. It's going to be no walk in the park that for Arsenal by any means, is it?
I mean, are you similar to Jurgen Klopp? Do you avoid watching these rival matches, or are you like, if they're playing at the same time, you jump through channels, or are you sat there watching it? Like, what's your weekend experience like when you're in the title race?
A few years ago for the 18-19 and 19-20 and 21-22, I used to kind of religiously, when they weren't playing at the same time as Liverpool, I would always try and watch them or try and get into the pub after the game to watch them or whatever. This year I've been it's quite weird because it feels like Liverpool's title challenge has almost crept up. So for the first half of the season, I was like, well, they're not really our business. They'll probably just win the league and whatever. We'll, I'd just take a return to the Champions League, a solid run in the Europa League kind of thing. That's kind of all you're asking for. But then all of a sudden it's kind of in the new year that, really we've gone on this really good run in the league, and you think actually...
We're expecting it to stop at every point. Exactly. Now you're like, well, we're past 30 games now. We're still in with the chances.
So it's kind of like, I mean, the game the other night against Villa, I avoided just because I didn't really have much hope, and one Villa went to the Etihad on the final day a few years ago. I think that's kind of left me scarred for life. I don't think I'll ever watch another Manchester City Aston Villa game at the Etihad. But in general, to be fair, like I do try and watch them just because I think it is quite interesting to kind of to see a 3-horse race. How all the teams kind of.
And it is good. I mean, no matter how this pans out, I think I think it'll go really down to the last game possibly, with at least 2 teams in a chance of winning it. But it's a refreshing change in how we've seen football over the past few years. Even when Liverpool have been involved, it's been a 2-horse race or whatever. So I think to see 3 clubs, I think it's good for the league as a whole. I think it's makes it slightly more competitive than what we've seen.
Absolutely, and in the years gone by, if it hadn't have been for Liverpool, and I know it's obviously easier. It's obviously very hypothetical, isn't it? But Man City probably would have won the league, 6 times in a row, finishing 20 points clear of United or Chelsea in third, which that's no advert for the Premier League, is it really? And the fact that Klopp's been able to really topple City, and he probably hasn't got the number of Premier Leagues he deserves. In an alternate universe, he's got 3 Premier League titles. He's on for a 4th this year, but I think that makes it all that would make this title all the more special this year if they were to do it. Having so many near misses, they had the one with COVID that they weren't able to celebrate with fans, and then to kind of have this as like, you talk about fairy tales. Klopp's last game at Anfield lifting the Premier League. It would kind of make up for all those other heartbreaks. I do feel.
I think so. I think it'd be the part of the year anyway. But I think we're getting ahead of ourselves. I certainly am. I'm trying not to allow myself get too far ahead. But I think we'll leave it there. Before we wrap it up quickly.
Let's give a score prediction, are you?
Yeah, I'm trying to give. I can't sell on one really, but you go first. Score prediction: Liverpool or Manchester United, Liverpool Sunday. Go.
I was going to go 1-1, but because I'm on this podcast, I'm going to go 2-1 Liverpool.
You know what? I'll go with you as well. 2-1, and I think it is going to be a horrible last 10 minutes. Again, I don't think it's going to be a fun game. I would take another
Nunes goal off his arse. Put it that way.
Yeah, that'd be. I think it's going to be a late finish for Liverpool again, but I think they can keep doing it, and hopefully, come tea time on Sunday, Liverpool are going to remain top of the league. Maybe, hopefully, top of the league all weekend. Who knows how this is going to play out? Well, Keifer, thanks for stopping by for a latte, and hopefully speak to you again soon. And up the Reds. See you next time. Yes.
Thank you, Mark.
And we're out.